he's out. He's in the carpenter crew there. And,
With the new rebuild?
and he says some days they get out at 2 o'clock, and he said, doesn't matter.
Wow.
An hour and a half.
Right.
At least, sometimes 2 hours.
I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Elmont Village Council Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. Welcome to Village Elmont Township Hall. Please rise for pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
President Dyke?
Present.
President Pro Tem Stuffler?
Present.
Councilmember Feldman?
Present.
Councilmember Glasser?
Present.
Councilmember Miller?
Present.
Councilmember Powell? Councilmember Schneider?
Present.
Approval of the agenda. I'm going to ask that we move item number 1, DDA board appointment, from item 2 to item number 1. Other than that, do we have any other changes or deletions, additions to tonight's agenda? Being none, I had no communications. Consent agenda. Meeting minutes, budget workshop, June 10th meeting minutes. Elmont Village Council special meeting, June 17th meeting minutes.
Actually, I think we would go back and make sure. I think it was the budget workshop. It is the budget workshop. I have one correction to the budget workshop meeting minutes.
We're back on budget workshop, June 10th, 2025 minutes.
Apologies. It's last paragraph on page 3 of the budget workshop minutes. I know gender is quite an issue these days,
Jeez,
but I do think
it's a mystery.
it was Mr. unless he clarified otherwise.
No, you are correct.
That's
Sorry
my
about
that's my only red line correction to the meeting minutes.
Any other changes on the June 10th meeting? June 17th special meeting. June 17th public hearing. June 17th truth and taxation hearing. June 17th Elmont Village Council regular meeting minutes. General fund, major street fund, local street fund, parks and recreation fund, downtown development authority fund, stimulus grant fund, capital project fund, sewer fund, water fund, equipment fund, payroll register report. There are no comments or concerns with the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved?
Support.
Motion by President Pro Tem Stuffler, supported by Councilmember Schneider, to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes by all council members present, unanimously by all council members present. So now is the time for public comment for agenda items on our regular agenda. Do we have any public comment tonight? Being none, we'll move on to our regular agenda. We're moving agenda item 2 to number 1, DDA board appointment. Angela?
As stated in your memo that I provided at the regular DDA board meeting on June 25th, 2025, the DDA board motion to recommend that Village Council President Tim Dyke appoint Ms. Julie Johnson to the DDA Board of Directors. Ms. Johnson will be filling a vacant seat with a term set to expire March 31st, 2027. I believe Julie Johnson would be an incredible asset to the Downtown Development Authority Board. As both a downtown business owner and a property owner, Julie brings a vested interest in the success and vitality of our downtown district. She is smart, driven, and brings a consistently positive attitude to every conversation. Her passion for continued progress and commitment to the betterment of not only the downtown, but our community as a whole make her an ideal candidate for the role.
The DDA board approved the appointment of Julie. second.
Johnson.
Kim, is my printed packet in my box, or did I not get one? I don't have a full packet. Or unless I'm missing, oh, never mind, I've got pages goofed up.
Sorry,
Excuse me for 1 second here.
I'll print it one-sided from now on.
Yeah, I goofed up the print, so. And we can't have something happen in the meeting without me goofing something before moving on. Okay. So at the last DDA meeting on at the last DDA meeting, we discussed the appointment of Ms. Johnson to the DDA board. It was unanimously voted at the DDA board. As council president, I'm going to appoint Ms. Julie Johnson to the DDA with an appointment of expire of March 31st, 2027, and I'll ask for council's ratification of that appointment.
As she is present, do we want to let her say anything, or?
Speech.
Hi, I'm Julie Johnson, a new business owner downtown, and I've been in the area for the last 15 years, and I just love this town, the people that are in it. I think the DDA has done a wonderful job of revitalizing things, bringing things back to life, some great events, and I would just be happy to be a part of planning all those things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody on council have any questions for Ms. Johnson? Then I will entertain a motion to ratify my appointment of Ms. Julie Johnson to the DDA board with an expiration date of March 31st, 2027.
I'll make the motion that we ratify President Dyke's appointment of Ms. Johnson to the DDA board with a term to expire March 31st, 2027.
Support.
Support.
Motion by President Pro Tem Steffler, supported by Councilmember Snyder to ratify my appointment of Ms. Johnson to the DDA board with a expiration date of March 31st, 2027. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. I abstain. The motion passes by all council members present, minus my abstention. Congratulations, Ms. Johnson, and thank you for having the want to help serve the community. We appreciate it. Agenda item number 2, DDA bylaws. So I'll start off by giving a brief history of this real quickly, and then I'll let Angela make her presentation. This came out of the joint subcommittee. It was started to be worked on in late January, early February as one of the high priorities of the committee. One of the reasons for the upgrade of the bylaws was the fact that the current bylaws were boilerplate, had loop, and didn't seem to really cover the all the points of oversight that the board needed and wanted. So it went through several iterations of debate in the subcommittee. We took dozens of examples from DDA bylaws from around the state and tried to see what other DDAs did and then conform to make it to customize it to the best Almont has. You'd be surprised how many boilerplate, straight-laced, one-page bylaws there are out there. And the entire purpose of this exercise was to create some bylaws that gave the DDA the oversight it needed and with detail, so the board could operate the way efficiently and more effectively through these new bylaws. So with that said, Angela, would you like to present? And also that these were approved by the DDA at their last meeting last week.
I have given you guys this. I apologize for not including in your packet. This was just for the DDA board originally, but after talking to Kim and Dale, they said it would be handy for you guys to have as well. I put together a key takeaways, that's 2 pages, that kind of highlight and summarize the changes. And then there's a page on why the Public Act 57 of 2018 applies to us. And then there is a bylaws comparison with the old version versus the new version for every article of the bylaws. The bylaws for the Elmont Downtown Development Authority have not been revised since 2017. After careful review by the Joint Committee earlier this year, it was determined that our governing document needed to be strengthened and brought into alignment with current legal standards and best practices. Since January, the Joint Committee has dedicated countless hours to reviewing, updating, and refining the bylaws. The updated version reflects clearer expectations for board membership and attendance, stronger conflict of interest and ethics policies, improved financial oversight, and more clearly defined roles for officers, committees, and the executive director. It is important to note that the DDA bylaws govern only the DDA board and its employee, and they are being amended to hold the board to a higher, more explicitly stated standard of accountability and transparency. Additionally, the bylaws are being updated to reflect Public Act 57 of 2018, which replaced the original DDA law, Public Act 197 of 1975, and have not been updated since the new act was enacted. The draft brought before you tonight includes all the edits and recommendations from our attorney, who has thoroughly reviewed the document. We are confident that these updated bylaws will provide a stronger foundation for the DDA's continued service to the Village of Elmont. And I will-
Questions from I know some people, council members have questions, so we'll open it up to questions and comments from council at this point.
So it applies to us if we're gonna keep going.
What do you mean if we're gonna keep going?
Right, because the current one, it's suspended, right?
What ended?
Act 1, what is it, 1?
It was 197 of 1975, and
Yeah.
Act 57 of 2018 repealed and replaced that act.
Correct.
So are you saying the replacement of the act canceled all DDAs in Michigan?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that per our DDA, originally as formed in 1984, was supposed to come back in 2004. And then we extended it, 20 more years to 2024. That's right, math. We haven't extended it since then. And looking at and reading Act 57, the first question I guess I have is, what portion of Act 57 are we covering? The entire thing or just Section 2, which is for DDAs?
You say covering.
So
What do you
when
mean?
we're referring to that Act 57 of 2018, we're saying that whole act we're going to reference, or just portions of that act?
You reference the act under which it was created and authorized. So you're referencing the correct legal citation for which it's authorized and created under. So when we repeal and we replace, we update the citation. I don't know if I understand the specifics of your question. Are you indicating that you would rather see that be more specific to the subsection?
Yeah, because it covers a lot more than just DDAs.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 12.
It's a tax increment financing act.
Sure,
Yeah.
understood. So, however, what would be the spirit and intent of the change if you didn't reference the subsection? What would be the difference?
Well, I guess there wouldn't be much of a difference, because I'm just wondering if the spirit and intent of what we're trying to reference is still in the original spirit and intent of establishing the DDA in 1984.
Just a side note, our current TIF plan that we are operating under is a 20-year plan, and the last time it was approved by council was 2015. So we have until 2035 to renew that with the village.
Because I'm reading section 125-4201 here, and it says This is called the legislative findings under that act. And everything in here, A through H, all have mentioned that the intent is when conditions of property value deterioration detrimental to the state economy or local units of government. Except that none of our property values are going down. In 1984, they were. Right? We were in a huge recession, 84, 85. We had to do something to save the downtown. So I guess the spirit and intent at the time was this is actually a financing tool to use government taxes to help improve property values in an economic area. So our downtown development.
Are you proposing that we should be dissolving the DDA?
Not proposing that. I'm saying, is that the intent, or are we changing the intent of the DDA? Because reading all of this new language, it's 2/3 changed. So it's like an entire new DDA.
So was the homecoming bylaws that we did. We changed those almost entirely as well.
Yep, 100% agree.
But you didn't have the equivalent arguments. We changed almost all the language there, but there was no concern. So why is the concern on this one?
I have no concern with it's more about what is the intent. The homecoming happens once every 5 years. It's a committee. Do we need just a committee for downtown, or do we need a whole another entity? The homecoming committee does not withhold taxes.
It has at times. At times it's not withheld, but it's been funded by taxpayer dollars in the past.
It's
But
funded, but it's not withheld, right? It's not to funding.
I'm just trying to get to the heart of what
Yeah.
you're after here. Is it that you think that these bylaws change the DDA's function?
Yes,
Okay, how?
by adding a whole bunch more
How does it-
bullets within that section about being able to lease property, rent property, buy property, develop property,
All things that I already did,
residential. I understand.
but we just didn't clarify. I mean, they were woefully inadequate, so we're bringing them up to snuff. So,
But is that
What
what
does
we
it-
want to do?
but what does it change? We are just clarifying things that weren't clarified before. What does it change? You're saying it changes the spirit and intent. The things you just mentioned, we both agree, they're already doing. So does it change anything? That's what I'm asking. Just what does it change?
I don't know if it changes anything or not.
That's why I'm asking.
The intent of the bylaws, all the things you're mentioning, the DDA can already do and has already done. The spirit and intent of these bylaws is to give more detail and more structure around it, so it's managed better and it's more clear to the public of what they're doing and how they're doing it. And it manages the board better because it specifies more directly what the functionaries are within that board through these bylaws. That's why we went through many bylaws to see what other DDAs were doing, to make sure that our intent was to make it clear, especially with some of the stuff that happened last year. That was the spirit to start with, and the entire spirit of doing this was to make the board more directly visible on what each activity and each functionary of the subcommittees on the board, how the board operates, how the director operates, functions in their roles. And I think that's what this accomplishes.
That's what council told us as well. Legal counsel told us as well that they were too vague, too ambiguous, and it wasn't a good enough structure. And so to approve them, and a lot of that language is we didn't wordsmith it up ourselves. It came from other DDA bylaws. We did the best we could as to cherry picking the best version of each provision on each topic across multiples. So, I mean, again, I'm just trying to understand is, in plain layman's terms, what is your point? Do you think it changes what they can do?
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
and by changing what they can do, is it giving them the ability to do things they weren't already doing, basically with our approval and oversight?
well, not basically with our approval, because there's things that happen without our approval.
You mean things within the budget that we approved?
No,
Okay. Do you want to?
they bought property,
Okay.
right?
Which
With-
was it with
Without
budgeted,
our approval.
but with budgeted funds that we approved?
No, It was not in the budget. That was never in the budget. They used their own slush fund, their own general fund.
Well, wait a minute. Their
purchase it.
funds are something we approve. We approve their budget like we just did.
It was not a budget line item.
Well, you're
prior
saying it
to
wasn't
approval.
budgeted for the improvement, or
Correct.
budgeted because it was just already sitting in their fund, not as a capital improvement.
Yeah,
right?
and if you read our original
Sure.
bylaws, it says that the DDA is to execute based on the opinion of the Elmont Village Council and its plan, on the Village Council's plan, not on the DDA's plan. It says that right in our bylaws, in the original bylaws.
In the bylaws that we're attempting to amend
The currently ones in place.
at the moment. Yep. Okay.
I just wondered if there were specific line items that you had with the bylaws that you weren't comfortable with, that you felt you would like stricken from them, like just as a way to facilitate this conversation specific to the bylaws. If there were aspects that you didn't feel comfortable with, I think that might be more productive, like if there are specific numbers or duties given to DDA.
I don't know that they can be stricken if they're directly out of the act.
Well, I think maybe general purpose defines what our expectations are, not necessarily what the law gives DDAs the ability to do. That could be a starting point.
Section 2, general powers.
Or I was thinking section 1, general purpose, if there was anything specific that you felt, went above and beyond where you felt comfortable.
No, not really, other than this is an entirely new section, right?
Yes, yeah.
I don't have any issues with section 1.
Okay, so
Section 2, there's a few things that I just question, whether it's what our intent is.
I think that's the point of creating the bylaws, and that's why we're here today, is to discuss the direction of the board, and if council isn't comfortable with certain sections of the bylaws, that's what we're here to do, is discuss those. So as far as section 1, general purpose, if there's specific critique of any of those, this is probably the place to bring that forward. And then if there's nothing in section 1, same thing, section 2, if there's specific things that you think you'd like to discuss, or anyone, I think that's also what we're here to do.
For me, this is the first time I'm seeing a lot of this stuff. Obviously, I haven't been watching the DDA meetings. I don't know if you went into this amount of detail. And some of this stuff, I'm just wondering, is this stuff that the public should get to see before we vote on it? Acquired by purchase or otherwise on terms and conditions and in a manner deemed proper to own, convey, or otherwise dispose of, or lease as lessor or leasee land and other property, real or personal. And I know that's all legal jargon about, I'm sure that was picked, and it may apply if you're in Detroit.
It applies to them right now.
This
They
is
already do it.
directly out of
They
the
own the
Public Act.
Historical Society building. They own multiple parking lots. They enter into parking agreements like with First Congregational Church. These are things that are already in existence that there wasn't clear language on. And that is the point, is not only to give clear direction to them, clear understanding for us, but also transparency to the public as to what is clearly defined. And like I said, this is language found in other DDAs across the state, so, which Tim actually found.
It's
and
also
provided.
language straight out of the Public Act. These are already authorities that the DDA has
Agreed.
by the state of Michigan.
Right.
They were never listed in our bylaws before, and I think that is another level of transparency with the community. We have this authority, who's gonna go and read the Public Act? But they're more likely to read our bylaws, so we wanted it all listed out.
Yeah, I agree that that does make it more transparent so that instead of just referencing an act,
Right. That no
we
one
have
can-
it here so that it's very clear for the board, the public, and for council what they do and do not have the authority to do. And then it's within those boundaries that we make decisions about what we feel comfortable with.
Wholeheartedly agree.
But if anyone wants to give me specific sections and numbers, I can, to take note of, I can get clarification from our attorney or whatever other information you.
Let's just see if there are any other provisions that council has any other concerns with.
There's none pertaining to section 1 or 2. I do have a question about Article 2, Board of Directors. We're comfortable moving on. This is just out of curiosity, if there was discussion among the committee on the number of members that are serving on the board. I know we've had some difficulty in the past filling those seats. Was there discussion about, is this the time that we would want to reduce the required number? Just wanted to see what the feeling of the committee was on that topic, or if it was discussed.
It was, and only minimally. We decided to keep it where it was because it is so difficult to run the DDA anyways. And as you know, it's so many volunteer activities and it is difficult to get volunteers. The intention is to staff back up and fill the board because otherwise it becomes too large a task for the rest of the board.
It's a balancing act because it is hard to get volunteers, and that was discussed. But also, if you look at the DDA board, they're right now now we're one short, right? But we've been two short, and there's one set of people that do 90% of the work. So by reducing the number of board members, it puts that much more pressure on. So we thought leaving it at that number was the proper thing to do.
And while it may take time, I think we can staff it back up. I mean, even some of the most recent people had to leave for personal reasons and would like to return. And be honest with you, if it were to stay vacant, we couldn't get anybody to fill it. We can certainly come back and we can always reduce that number, which
Right,
we've done
like we have in the
previously.
past.
Right, exactly. But
Mhm.
closing that gap right now would seem only to discourage it. Then if there was interest, come back and try to lift it again.
Right.
The intent is to try to fill them,
Okay.
right? And I think there's good faith effort on the part of some of the village council members, DDA members, the DDA director, constantly searching, encouraging people. We have some other people who have already expressed interest and said they'd like to.
Good.
Summertime, springtime sports are a big problem and conflict with that. So
Right.
we're hoping that may reduce it when those pass. So
I think it was helpful to understand that an additional council member could serve if they chose to do so.
don't ask me. We're not putting 3 Schneiders on the board. That's,
No, thank you. Yeah, that was a follow-up question that I had, is that this question of who can serve on the board continually comes up. And I see that there was some criteria for the director, but not necessarily board members. I wondered if there was also discussion on, should that go into the bylaws, or have we sort of established that and it just wouldn't be appropriate to have it in there at this time?
so there's no defining legal requirements, which is why we don't want to put it in there. And again, we don't want to be discouraging. And if you remember, just like when we just reviewed Ms. Johnson's application, the village itself already formulated and we discussed an application process, which then is subject to DDA board approval and then
Right.
ratification. And so does not seem like a process that we at the subcommittee should be interfering with and creating a contradictory process. How we select and appoint has not been an issue, and I wouldn't want to interfere with that process or make it any more limiting or discouraging. We all have the right to participate in that selection process. So I don't think it would be appropriate for us to create it in more limiting, and also who should decide those terms if there is no
Yeah.
baseline beyond what we've already created.
Yeah, and that's why I wondered if it had been discussed by the committee, whether or not to include it or not.
I think it's ultimately council's decision to appoint to the board as it is, so it felt a little, I don't want to say redundant, but if we have certain criteria and then it's up to council anyways, I mean, it's going to be at the village council president's discretion either way who he appoints, so. But yes, we have discussed at length between the DDA board and somewhat at joint committee how we navigate application process. I wish that we were swimming in applications so we could,
Agreed.
right? But we've been
Yeah.
very, very fortunate and blessed to have incredible board members, so.
So say there was great care taken both by the DDA board itself and by the joint subcommittee to be very careful not to subvert the authority of village council.
Absolutely.
And that definitely felt like walking the line of trying to step on village council's toes. So
Sure.
just was not an area we were even interested in touching.
I can hand it over. If there's anyone who has further questions.
Article 3.
I did have just a quick question here, and that we include nonfeasance as a definition, but not as a reason for removal. And I wonder if that was just an omission by error or if that was intentional.
Subparagraph.
Nope, that should be, that was,
So, yeah, it says can be removed for malfeasance, but but defined below as malfeasance, misfeasance, and nonfeasance.
we didn't add all of
But
those
they
to
weren't all
the.
added, so I didn't know.
I see we were excessive evidence, misconduct, malfeasance, right? Is that what you're referring to, or in section 1.1?
Correct. There were definitions,
Mhm.
but they were not referenced in the preceding.
In the preceding paragraph, right? Yep.
So I didn't know if that was an omission and just an error, or if that was intentional.
Again, this is pretty standard language from another municipalities. I think it was the city of Jackson that this came from, but it's not not intentional to leave it out. I see no issue with modifying to add after the word malfeasance, misfeasance, and
Those
nonfeasance.
two-
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like if we're going to go through the trouble of defining it, probably should.
Sure. I think when they were originally drafting, they probably felt like that fell under or any other good cause, which, I think they were trying to avoid being too wordy, which this thing is already rather wordy, so there's no harm in adding 2 additional words.
Yeah.
Anybody else on Article 3, Section 1, or Article 3, Section 2? Article 3, Section 3. Article 4, Section 1. Article 4, Section 2. Article 4, Section 3.
The only question I have here is just a clarification. What is considered inside information if everything's publicly available? Unless we have closed session.
I think that would be,
That's basically the definition, is that it is non-public information, right? There are times when we get information that is not available to the public that we're not allowed to disclose and to act on it. I mean,
But that has to be within a closed session. That can't be outside of a closed session, or else
there's other circumstances where you find information that you're not allowed to disclose outside of a closed session. Rare, limited, but it's not limited to just closed session. There are other circumstances that we're not allowed to disclose, like
Attorney.
negotiations on certain contracts, things of that nature, which didn't actually take place in a closed session, but you're aware of those circumstances and you would maybe be able to capitalize on those, that it would be possible. Eventually, it's going to end up in a closed session, but maybe you have advanced knowledge of it before a closed session. Either way, you wouldn't want somebody to be able to capitalize on it. The same concept of insider trading, so to speak.
Which doesn't apply to government.
Sure, but right, this is not actually SEC regulated activities. Agreed. It's not trading in securities, but just the same essential concept of we wouldn't want somebody to be able to financially benefit from it.
Article 4, Section 3, and Article 4, Section 4. Article 5, Section 1. Article 5, Section 2. Section 3. Section 4. Section 5. Section 6. Section 7. Article 6, Section 1. Article 6, Section 2.
This is a section I did have questions on. I know in the past there had been some disagreement or, items needing clarification on who could sign a contract, whether that was the chairperson or the executive director. I didn't see that clarity when I read through this, and I just wondered if maybe I was missing it. But I still got the sense that you could read through this and not fully understand which particular contracts would need to be signed by whom. And so I don't know if, Angela, you have that information or the committee
So
discussed it and you guys know, but that was one area
this
that
is
I
something
felt
that
like-
I've talked to the Michigan Downtowns
Yeah.
Associating Director a lot, and she said the reason that it's not listed that a director can sign contracts like it is with the chairperson is because that is inherently their job, to sign contracts that the board has approved. And that, I don't disagree that it could be expounded upon further in our bylaws, but she said that that is your job, is to execute the will of the board. And so she said, I know that has been a point of contention, but that directors across the state, they don't have it listed because that is their job, is to execute the will of the board.
But also, we did explicitly state it. It's in
What?
Article 10.
Oh, yeah, under,
Yeah, so
Yep.
it's
under
ahead of here, but
executive
since you're
director.
asking, I do want to make reference to it while it's up.
Mhm.
So it'd be page 13 overall. So that's under Article 10, number 2, F.
yes, he's right. So
Right,
I knew we
but
talked
it's-
about it, but
We made sure
We
to
talked about
eliminate
a lot
the
of
loophole.
things.
Yes.
Right, I understand the execution of contracts duly authorized to be signed. Right, but it's like, accept such contracts, documents, and instruments as may be required to be signed by the chair of the board or some officer.
so some of that is
So I
like
was
my,
confused.
with
For
my
example,
employment
per
contract, I can't even speak to the attorney about it. Like, the attorney won't speak to me about my employment contract because they need to speak to the chair of the board.
There are very, very limited circumstances in which it can't be her, because it would be a conflict of interest, like her own contract needs to be signed by the chair. I don't know that we could enumerate those other hypotheticals, and I would feel like it might be a bad idea to try, and then you find yourself in a circumstance where there is another one that would be a conflict for hers, but the bylaws didn't say that. So we tried to make it clear that anything that the board votes in authorization of, she is allowed to sign unless they explicitly otherwise state. Unless you have a better idea.
that explanation helps, but that was something specific I was looking for in these bylaws that I just felt I didn't have a good understanding of which contract should be signed by whom.
Mhm.
Employment absolutely makes sense.
I honestly struggle to think of another example.
Okay,
I mean, I'm sure like any like disciplinary action, well, I guess that wouldn't be a
that
contract.
would be
Right.
a contract.
Anything that like involves me, but I'm not supposed to, or the executive director. Yeah, I can't think of anything other than a contract.
It doesn't mean that it might not come up.
But it may exist somewhere.
Right. It's theoretically possible, and I try not to create more problems than we're solving. Before, it was not clear whether or not the director even
Yes.
could or who could.
I
We have
remember
clarified that they absolutely
disagreement.
can, when authorized by the board, accept such contracts that you're not, right? Which would need to be clarified by the board when approving.
Okay, as long as you all feel comfortable that the bylaws provide the clarity you need, I'm comfortable with moving forward. I just, like I said, when I was reading through it.
Because that's been a point of contention. No, I get it.
Yes,
I get it.
I thought it was
Mhm.
something that really needed to be crystal clear.
We're on Article 6, Section 1, officers. Section 2. Section 3. Article 7, committees. Article 8, records. I'm sorry, Article,
It's the Roman numerals.
I missed the IX. Article 9, finances and expenditures.
Question here in Article 9. Is that a change in the expenditure amount? So basically, you can spend up to $5,000 without approval.
We have a spending resolution that is far lower than that is enacted, but that is, the $5,000 is the emergency spending limit, and our spending resolution expounds upon that if $5,000 in an emergency situation needs to be spent, there are certain things I need to do, but no, we have our own spending resolution that dictates how much can be spent. And it is far, far less.
The bylaws would, but I think you need to clarify the difference in the distinction, because you're making it sound like this is obviously going to raise and be in conflict with the resolution, but that's not exactly the case.
Correct.
Because that resolution is for emergency circumstances only, and it's what they were having in absence of this, knowing this was planned. So this will bring it to even in a non-emergency, that the spending limit is 5,000. And then I believe the intent is to modify your resolution going forward if this were to be passed, right? Because that was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So our spending resolution, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it is the director can spend 500 or 1,000, and then an additional 1,000 with the chair's approval, and then the treasurer has their own spending limit. And then our emergency was all of the limits combined, which is $5,000. And I believe, actually, now that I'm seeing this, the expenditure exceeding $5,000, I believe that is in correlation with the getting bids, which you can spend $5,000 without getting a bid. If it's over 10,000, you need a bid. So I believe that's where that $5,000 came from. And, oh yeah, right under procurement policy.
Clarification, Pete.
Well, I guess it currently is 500 and it's going to 5,000. So yeah, that's an increase.
Article 10.
So I'm guessing that that $5,000 is tied to the same $5,000 bond in Article 10, Section 2. Question I have about that is that the executive director is required to get a bond, but in that same paragraph, the DDA is going to pay for the bond.
It's pretty standard with employment, yeah. I mean, even when firms hire notaries, and notaries are required to get the bond, they usually pay for that bond for that notary. I mean, it's not typical that the bond comes out of the employee's pocket. You're requiring the bond, you get them bonded, and you usually pay for the fee for their bonding. You don't, the whole point is to have security in case that individual does something, right? And so you want the security, they will apply for it, but you usually pay the minimal nominal fee for it. That would just be the custom practice I've always seen. I would never seen where the employee is required to come out of their own pocket for the bond. That would be unusual as far as I've ever seen.
I have a question for number 3 for the executive director one. Do we want to have a clause in there about when we were talking before about actually working for a downtown business?
I don't know that we can write it out. I think that has to be a choice that is made by the board when selecting their director. I don't know that it is appropriate that we eliminate it altogether. I realize that leaves it as an open possibility, but that is a choice. And for example, when Ms. Edwards was hired, there was thorough discussion on that topic. In my opinion, they ultimately discussed and came to a proper resolution, but it was their choice to make. I don't know that we can limit that. It might be a little bit discriminatory or a little bit overly broad to say.
I think it's a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So it's your point of view that we need to put in that they cannot work for, because that if you remember when I know you weren't present at that meeting, but there was a lot of objection to that of telling people where they can and cannot work, and I think the decision is that you can't tell them that they can't work there, but you can say, because you work there, we're going to choose not to select you. That, you see what I'm getting at as the distinction and the difference? Saying you can't work there is one thing. Saying we choose not to employ you because you do, and we view that as a conflict of interest, is another. I tend to agree with you guys, but I just don't know that it might be a step too far to.
I would like to get an opinion on that.
Well, yeah, you don't have to say you can't work there. You can just say that your application will not be accepted if you are under the employment of an existing DDA business.
I don't
But-
disagree, but
You could have this job
Mhm.
and apply to work for a business, so
Mhm.
it wouldn't necessarily only be at hiring that
Sure,
conflict
sure,
would arise.
later. You're right. All I'm saying is that there were legal objections to it previously, and I don't know that it's something we wanted to wade into. If you want to eliminate that possibility, I don't object to it. I do think that you need maybe a little bit of a legal opinion there. Is it?
I would like a legal opinion and have that in there the legal way. I agree with that.
There's conflict of interest for board members, but not necessarily the director. Is that correct?
I think that's correct.
It's for the director, not board members, because board members.
Oh, no, but there is an entire conflict of interest section,
Section,
which
but
does
it's-
apply to
right.
board members.
But not the
Yeah.
And we're trying to be
director.
very clear about that,
Right.
because that's really where the concern actually does normally lie, or we run into most often. But very valid point that it could exist at the time that you're either considering the employment or take place at any point during the actual employment.
Mhm.
So then that becomes the question of, what if the individual owns their own small business in the DDA district? Does that mean then they are prohibited from being a director?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That'll be interesting to hear the response on that, because I don't remember seeing that addressed in any of the bylaws we read.
It wasn't?
Yeah.
It wasn't.
I don't know that it is. I know
It wasn't.
several DDA directors throughout the state that are also.
Employed.
Business- yeah,
That's
business
what I'm saying
owners.
is first of all, I think that there's probably a legal complication with it. Two, that is at the discretion of the board if they want to engage in that, because conflict of interest in this specific narrow arena is a matter of opinion. Meaning some may view it as a conflict of interest and some may not. And we all have a vote in that circumstance. If you view it as a conflict of interest, you choose not to give the employment. If you view it as, it is, then you can vote to not give that employment. May not be something that we want to engage in, but if you want to try to write it out, yeah, I think you need a legal opinion as one. Two, you're taking away this board's and any future board's discretion in that circumstance,
Unless they want to amend the bylaws or something.
which is going to then mean you got to have a majority of the DDA and then of the village council, and it's more difficult, which is why I'm saying is I think we can all exercise our discretion. While it might be our opinion right now that may be a conflict of interest, you are taking away that choice to decide whether or not it's a conflict of interest of future boards.
So, or there's a third option in that you could say with the state, if you want to have another job, you have to submit a form that said, this is the job, these are the duties, these are the hours that I expect to work. It will not conflict with my position. And that could be subject to council approval, board and council approval.
But so still the ability to exercise discretion,
Correct,
but just required full disclosure.
correct.
I mean, I think required full disclosure is already part of the game anyways. I think full disclosure should be there anyways. I don't have an issue with that, but
I'm happy to reach out for a legal opinion and see what wording would be suggested.
It would probably be more likely that they had a job when this was a part-time position, but now that it's a full-time paid
One, it's a
position.
full-time position, but two, you're in a position where you're making decisions about downtown businesses and influencing and
Yeah.
in a small town. So can you make that note?
Yep, I made a note already, and I will reach out in the morning.
Anybody else on Article 10?
Question on the bonding. I know there was discussion about adding the treasurer
Mhm.
being bonded as well. Did you want to put that in the bylaws, or is that?
Yeah, so our previous bylaws said that, was it the previous bylaws or was it an attorney recommendation that we bond the
I think it was
treasurer,
attorney recommendation.
which was Holly at the time, and it is not anymore, so we have to.
I just wasn't sure if you wanted it written in
Considering
the
those are the
bylaws.
two people that have access to the money. I would-
wait, hold on.
We don't really, though. The
I'm
money's
confused.
all through the village,
Well,
besides the credit
besides that
card.
one, well, there is one account.
Oh, yeah, Tri-County.
So wait, at the subcommittee, we reviewed the recommendations and the red lines of the attorney after their thorough review. That wasn't one of the red lines?
That was not one of the red lines from our attorney now. This was probably, I don't know, over 6 months ago that, I don't know. Kim sent Holly an email saying that there was a recommendation that she be bonded. I would have to go back and look to see.
We don't,
who it
but we
was
don't know
from.
who recommended it after reviewing our bylaws?
It wasn't about our bylaws, I don't believe. I believe it was just,
Discussions of.
Now I'm getting it. That's how I was going to, just trying to figure out how that
I
worked.
believe it
Okay.
was another discussion with.
It's just different counsel for a different reason,
Yes.
but could be applicable here.
Yes,
Now
yep.
I get it. Okay.
Can we add that as a question too?
Yes, yep, absolutely.
What section would that fall under? Because this one is only for the executive director, so is it going to go under the,
The duties of the treasurer?
that's what I was going to kind of get at. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
necessarily a duty, but it is a requirement. The entire section is officers and responsibilities, and it could be the responsibility or duty, however you want to phrase it, but under treasurer, so that would be, Article 6, Section 2, Number 4.
Article 6. I will compile this all in an email tomorrow so I can get all of the answers at once.
Anybody else on Article 10? Article 11.
So this is an entire new section, right?
Mhm.
We're adding in, so are they a board member or are they just an audience member when wanted?
Well, they're not a board member. They of course have no vote. This is trying to clarify because there was questions before when we transitioned through legal counsel. How does that work? How does approval work? How does removal work? And again, this was not our creation. This was taken from other bylaws of other DDAs in the state, trying to clarify exactly how it works, what the expectation is, who they're to communicate with, try to make sure there's no one person who has the only communications with them without the rest of the board being aware, how that all works, trying to make it very clear and straightforward.
So in section 1, is it for the board or may one get legal advice if need be? And I know we obviously had problems with that prior, but I guess what my point is like if said member needed to get a hold of legal for some reason, would they be allowed to without acting and asking the board for approval if need be?
Not currently.
Well, right, not currently. It is, and this was also in communicating with other DDAs. It is almost strictly across the state, very clear. The DDA director is the one with direct communication to the DDA's attorney. With or without the permission of the board is up to the board's decision. Currently in place, there's a restriction that in order to not exceed the fiscal budget, actually, I don't even know because that motion was for this fiscal year. So that motion may be expired now, but
Yeah.
so it was to limit it without board's discretion. You had to have board's permission to contact, right? Now, different boards may handle that differently, but that's going to be at their discretion of how they want to do that. But to clarify, it has always been the DDA director who would communicate, unless otherwise expressly voted on or authorized by the rest of the board. The board may authorize further than that. And it's not to say that another person, for example, the chair, may not participate in those conversations, but you would never do so absent the director themselves. So that's the way that this was designed, was in mind and in keeping with.
Unless it was regarding the director.
Unless it's regarding the director, which is
Just clarification.
which is one of the very obvious exceptions. If you had to discuss labor, employment, or contract issues, you obviously have to do that absent the director.
Yeah, because I was just wondering in case someone actually had something that they did not want to bring up to the board and wanted to get their own legal opinion if they're allowed to, per se.
No,
I mean,
no.
like on a council, I wouldn't just call up our attorney. Would go through a president or a village manager. I wouldn't
Correct.
have that.
You are welcome to contact your own lawyer on your own
Yeah.
time with your own money and not spend village taxpayer funds just because you felt like it.
I mean, I get that, but
That's the reality. And if you feel as though you have things that you want to address, ask the board for permission to contact. And if it was adequate and reasonable, I don't see why the board would say you can't participate in that conversation, but you're certainly not going to do it outside of the director's presence unless it was specifically about the director. And if it was specifically about the director, then the board absolutely needs to be aware again of what the issue is. I mean, that is the point, is that there's not going to be secret running to the DDA attorney and running up DDA legal bills with taxpayer funds without approval. So, I mean, it would be, I mean, it's the same thing here. When we need something, Dale contacts legal counsel, not us. So I mean, it would just be in keeping with the way that it normally is structured.
yeah, but I was just looking at it from the aspect of they're more of a volunteer, let's per se, than
Sure.
an appointed official. That's the only reason why.
Mhm.
They might not know that. So that was just some questions I had.
And I think it's good, that it is spelled out so
Yeah.
that there isn't future
Yeah.
confusion.
It's on section 11. Article 12. Article 13.
13 just had a missing number of days. Under 2.
Oh my gosh. We never filled that in, but I think that's because we were talking about putting that in our policies and procedures manual instead of our,
I thought we landed on it was going to be both as a reinforcement, but I mean, to me, it should be in the bylaws. It's not the biggest deal in the world for it to be under policies and procedures, because policies and procedures are supposed to review annually and you could change it if necessary, but I don't like the idea of it being absent in the bylaws entirely, but
We have a number?
2. That would be mine.
that's where we had left
think
it at
that's where we-
discussion, but
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there needs to be a reasonable amount of time for Angela to be able to make modifications, issue it to the board, and for the board to review it in advance of a meeting. And even 2 days is cutting it pretty close, but that's,
Yeah, and I think that's the board.
Mhm.
I don't want to dictate what that is. I just thought it should be filled in.
I agree.
So we have some follow-up legal questions. We've gone through the entire thing. Did anybody else go ahead?
We already spoke about it, but just so it's clear, the page number, just that's the
Yes,
only
yep,
other thing,
yep.
page numbers.
That was
Yeah.
because
The
she's,
of two is still messed up, yeah.
when she sent them, she sent the copies with her red lines and the clean copy, and which is why it says 1 of 2, but I will change the page numbers.
Anybody from council have any other comments or concerns at this time?
I want to clarify what the questions we're asking for legal on are. I only wrote it down as 2.
That's what I had.
Okay. I just want to, but, so everybody's on the same page,
So
so we don't come back and say, wait a minute, I thought you were going to ask 5 other ones.
The first question was the conflict of interest. The
Mhm.
second one was the bonding.
Prohibition for working for any other downtown business, that it is strictly prohibited. You cannot work in any
Right.
other downtown district affiliated business.
Right, yeah.
That's, whether or not that's even legal, I have an opinion on that. And
Or,
And under
or
require-
if there's an alternative
Right.
that I propose, that they would need to submit.
I
some
am,
type
I am
of- yeah.
perfectly fine with adding on the alternative caveat there, or the, whether or not that it's a requirement or what the legal opinion is on the treasurer being bonded.
Yep, I have those 2, and then I also have adding, this is not for the attorney, but adding misfeasance and nonfeasance to section 1, paragraph 1 under removal.
Sure, yeah, I think that's just a,
I tried to find it too. Do we have anything about the streaming or anything of that nature in these bylaws?
what do you mean?
Like for live streaming, stuff like that, or anything like that within there?
Oh, there is an existing social media policy that's already been signed, so that would cover
It's
it.
still covered? That's what I
Well,
wasn't
and
sure.
because, right, we can't create anything here that would be contradictory to it.
I know, that's why I was. just
So,
trying to-
right,
I didn't see it, but I just
we did
wanted to
not-
make sure.
We have not repealed our existing social media policy, which the DDA has adopted, signed, and is in effect in a current policy, like all the other subsidiaries of the village. So, yeah, this would not be meant to address that.
No, I'm good.
Anybody else? We have consensus to have those follow-ups done by the DDA attorney through Angela. Okay,
Yes.
thank you, everybody, for the good and deep
Um,
discussion.
Sorry,
Angela.
just
Yep.
for a quick, in order to contact the attorney, I need board approval. So I will not be able to get that until after the DDA's next meeting.
Again, while we were pointing out that, did that motion expire? I just suggest you look at that.
I'll look at the policy in depth, but I'm pretty sure it was not limited to the fiscal year. I know that was the reasoning behind it, but I don't think the
I
motion.
think that was the wording of it, but
Okay,
I'm
I'll
not,
double
look,
check.
I'm not
But
weighing
if
in,
it did
just,
not expire,
Then
and
yes.
then I
Okay.
will not, just so you all know, I will not be getting clarification until I have that approval.
Okay.
Thank you for letting us know that.
Yeah,
And-
yeah.
and Angela, thank you for the presentation, much appreciated.
Thank you, guys.
Long discussion, but very in-depth and worthwhile. I appreciate everybody's participation. Item number 3, the Elmont Township Police Contract.
Mr. President, in the packet is a copy of the revised contract that we have used for a number of years with the township for police service. Recently, it was updated to include a new number, an annual number that they proposed or voted upon at the township level. And there were two things. Well, so the agreement again is basically the same agreement that was sent out for your review about a month ago. And really the only change in it is the dollar amount, and we did remove the renewal paragraph. So there is no standard renewal in this. It would be either notice that there's intent to continue or terminate in 1 year. It is a 1-year contract.
That notice was did I read 60 days before?
Correct.
Correct.
Answer any questions? And their members of the negotiating team are here, so they could answer any questions as well.
I'll go first, I guess. So obviously this number is lower than what was originally proposed in our budget. What is the budgetary impact for the village in accepting this offer?
Well, in the end, the one thing that remains open is the staffing level. But
Correct.
what was concluded by the negotiating committee was we would offer a number based on the actual cost for individuals, 5 full-time officers with administration staff and the command staff for their share of the cost, half of the cost of each of the command staff. So that number was $673,000. It included the removal of overhead, basically the purchase of the new computers that we will have to do this year due to the software evolution going on in the world, and the copier lease costs. Those things were removed, and it was that 673 focused solely on manpower costs. So
The 673 also included overtime costs that we removed as part of the negotiation to try to come to an agreement.
But I do think the answer to your question is $23,000 out of our general fund to subsidize it. That's the answer.
And then the follow-up question, is there any effort in the police department budget to trim any costs from the budget, or is that just the village is covering that?
At this point, the budget has been approved.
Mhm.
We have a max, but of course you're familiar with how we budget worst case scenario on expenses. So it is planned that we won't get to the full $750,000 that would be the half of the current general fund budget. That doesn't include the roughly $200,000 in equipment cost that is also attached to that. So I anticipate that it is an attainable number. It was placed in our revenue line item when the budget was approved.
I think the only realistic, even theoretical way at this point left to trim the budget at all would be not to hire the additional staff. But I think Chief Willis did a pretty good job of explaining why that's actually a terrible idea. And it's not an appropriate way to run the department. We do need more full-time officers. I know you recall when we've been where we only have a few actually full-time officers and we have 14 part-time officers, which was really difficult. We had lots of turnover. It made training really hard. Sure, we might save on some benefits, but it becomes really, really difficult.
Quality of service is really important.
You're right, and it makes also scheduling and managing really difficult because their availability is all over the place, and then they leave after a year, and then we're constantly searching. So, like he said, while it'll be possible to do fill-ins with part-timers for us to actually fill out these shifts, we need more full-time officers to do it appropriately. I think he's right. Just in general. Otherwise, I don't know where else there's left to trim unless we decide to make
You
significant
don't get a
cuts.
car.
You don't need a car, which means you don't need a computer, which means you don't need benefit. Right? We would have to make significant cuts across the board.
And to expound on the part-time, part-timers end up costing quite a bit to outfit when they come on board. And they generally, we have part-timers that work 1 day a month. So they're plug-in people for events or, emergencies, that sort of thing. So full-time officers is the best route. I will also report that we received a proposal from the township that was basically a new service agreement. It was very similar to what you would sign if you were agreeing to share a park or something like that. It was nothing like our actual contract that we've used for years. It is our contract, so I have in front of you our updated contract that if you approve the number and the document as presented, then we will forward that to the township for their approval.
Questions from council regarding the proposed contract? I just want to thank Pete for his participation on the committee. His knowledge was very, very helpful, and his work was very, very diligent. So Pete, thank you for your contributions. If there's no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the Village of Elmont Township agreement for law enforcement services for a 1-year contract beginning today, July 1st through June 30th of 2026.
Support.
Motion by Councilmember Feldman, supported by Councilmember Schneider to approve the Village of Elmont Township agreement for law enforcement services. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. The motion passes by all council members present. Now it is the time on our agenda for public comment for any non-agenda items. Do we have any public comment? Step forward.
My name's Wees Lagan. I'm from the village. And I just want to go over a little bit of history with the DDA, if I can. First off, when I'm going to read from the DDA website, okay? The Elmont DDA was formally established by the Elmont Village Council on November 7th, 1984, with the adoption of the ordinance number 139. This ordinance established the district boundaries and established a 20-year life for the DDA. It was amended in 1992 and again in 1998. The revised plan extended the life of the DDA to 2034 or until all debts are retired. If you notice, when the DDA was first set up, it was set up with a very, 20 years or until everything was finished. It has now become just really forever. There's no stopping point with the DDA. And that would be okay perhaps, except for the way the DDA is funded. I don't know how many of you know how the DDA is funded. It's a TIF funded, which is TIF, tax increment financing, okay? And when you fund something like that, and you look at how big the DDA district boundaries have grown, They are huge, and there is a whole lot of money now that they collect. Now, the way TIF funding works, and I didn't know when I was sitting, when I first sat here, I had to go and I asked Kim, and Kim explained it to me. And I'm going to really simplify it down because of time. But TIF funding is as if I have, let's say I have a block of land and its tax basis is $100. And let's say I build a big building on that, and now the tax base is $6,000, okay? Elmont Village and Township and the libraries and the schools and everybody who would pay our taxes still only get that little bit of the $100. The DDA gets $5,900. So as time goes on, it gets worse and worse and worse as far as, our schools might be cheated, our libraries might be cheated. And that's really all I have to say on the subject, because I wasn't sure how much everybody knew about the way the DDA is funded. Thank you.
Thank you, Weezy. Nice to see you.
Sorry.
We have no open discussion tonight. We are going to go in closed session, but next is council manager comment. Manager Curverson, do you have anything to bring to council?
Just a few things since my last update. I have reached out to the Fort County Community Foundation to search on our behalf. They reached out to me and said, hey, just so you know, we're experts in finding and writing grants. So if you have anything you want us to look for, we'd be happy to do that for you. So I've given them a detailed request on searching for funding, several sources that I was thinking would be available for the new DPW project, new DPW building. So we'll see if they are able to unearth any funding sources for that project. We had our first detailed meeting about the Fall Festival, Heritage Festival, and I had some assignments, arranging the sheriff, different things that I did last year. They've all been taken care of, so hopefully I haven't got answers yet, but we're moving along with that process. The chief was involved. DPW, we talked about the way the barricading worked last year and tweaks that we needed to do. So it went a long ways in just one meeting. I'm going to be sending tonight or tomorrow a note out to the park board. We have been having, I don't want to say a problem, but it definitely is a problem with the park board members reaching out to city staff. We're getting emails, texts, calls to the office from multiple board members on a daily basis with demands or requests or any number of things. And it's really become incredibly time consuming. Putting on the back of that we've had nothing but complaints about charging the park board for our time. I think we really need to identify where and how they are eating up office time, DPW time, my time, Kim's time. And so I've written an email and having Kim review it, and hopefully it's direct, not rude, but I've got to get the point across that we're literally today, we probably had 10 contacts regarding something from the weekend that isn't even supposed to be under our jurisdiction. So anyway, you may hear about that. I don't know. And the last thing I want to do is remind you, I will be out of the office after tomorrow for a brief vacation. So that's it.
Dale, the email that you plan to send to Park Board, are you requesting that we identify a single point of contact and that all communication go through that point of contact to be designated by the board?
Sure. What I actually say is, if you all want to call, that's fine, but you only contact one person at the village, and it's through work orders,
Right.
which is
Which is-
set up already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the heads up. I agree that it's not a very efficient way to do things. Similar to our discussion on board members contacting attorneys. There should be a single point of contact, agreement on the issues that we're reaching out for help on, because that does spend park funds.
Yes.
And that should be agreement from the board. So I appreciate you sending that out, and I'm sure there'll be some discussion to be had, which is fine. Yes, yeah, but yeah, I'm fully supportive of having a more structured communication strategy.
Anything else, Mr. Curbs? Our treasurer, please.
Just that I will not be in attendance at the next meeting. I will be out of the office.
You have to cancel it. Can't do it.
No, you'll do fine without me.
Who's going to turn it on, Kim?
Right.
Us, a bunch of lights. They're supposed to figure that out on our own?
You'll be fine.
Councilmember Glasser. Councilmember Feldman.
Quick question for Manager Kerberson. Did the drain commissioner ever get a hold of you about Wednesday or Thursday? I can't remember what day it was. I guess it was Thursday.
We did have contact with him that evening a couple of times, highlighting a few of the issues. We also had contact with the road commission because there was some road washouts that we repaired for them. But no, I had been contacting the drain commissioner because we have those specialty drain things in our roadway that are sinking, and I've wanted them repaired and brought up to snuff. He keeps saying, well, I don't have any money. They spent it all during the project. We were considering determining what it would cost if we fixed them, what we would charge him. We're looking at that right now, but that issue has been outstanding with him. And then the 4+ inches of rain Wednesday night was something else. So we had communication with him about where the rivers were, the impact, what was going on at the moment, but we didn't get any follow-up, such as maybe something they would change or do. Within the village, things flowed the way they were supposed to. We still have water flowing today from large backups off of farm fields, but they are flowing at capacity. It just takes a long time.
Yeah, I've gotten calls about the Stroop drain and basements being backed up off of in K-Lynn again because of, I think there's still the open discussion we had about whether that project was actually completed like it was supposed to be, being an open air retention pond versus an enclosed gathering point. Suma drain, which is on the west side of Van Dyke, being backed up and not cleared out for a few years. And then also down Kidder Road. Coming across with the change of I don't know if they did an impact study or not when they filled in all those nice 4-foot deep ditches and put in that walking path, but they replaced all of that capacity with just a small pipe.
But there is one thing that I had it on the tip of my tongue, I just forgot. You made me think of that pipe over there off of Kidder. Anyway, we have been talking to them. Oh, the one thing that I have found interesting, and this is just my observation based on my experience, is, older homes that were built 1800s, whatever, to maybe even the 1950s, they did a lot of downspout connection to their drain tiles out to the storm sewer. They weren't hooked to the sewer necessarily, but they went to the storm sewer. Well, with this rain that we had, the volume of water was so great that the surface pressure was greater than that in the pipes. So people started having those backflows coming up into their basements, just like you just mentioned. The fact that a new home, like in that subdivision, that wouldn't have a backflow preventer built into the drain is amazing to me, because it's a $10 part that would save the basement over and over. But we found, everybody I've talked to, it's been a matter of they didn't have a backflow preventer in their basement. Their yard is under 3 feet of water, and that pressure is pushing water up through their basement drain. So just a very common problem in this particular storm.
I got a few things. I want to just thank the subcommittee, the joint subcommittee for the DDA and the village for their ongoing efforts. I know we've put in an awful lot of volunteer hours. I think, we've met numerous times. I think we've spent 60 plus hours together, hammering things out, researching, having very spirited debates. The meetings are rarely less than 3 hours. We go over a lot of things. I think it's been a lot of good work and a lot of good effort, and I think it goes underappreciated kind of regularly, but I do appreciate it. I think these bylaws are a representative of that, and I thank council for a good and thorough review of those bylaws. But there's been a lot of comments about the DDA tonight that I think we've heard some clarity as to, that it has been renewed. It does still need to exist, and a lot of the content and discussion over, for example, the TIF tax capture. I previously voted to dissolve the DDA under the belief and the expectation that it would somehow be financially beneficial to this community. That was proven not to be true very, very thoroughly by multiple parties, because it isn't just the TIF tax capture that funds the DDA. In fact, it is a net negative not to have the DDA. The TIF tax capture is only one portion of their funding. They get portions of funding from other portions of the state and other things, which is actually a financial benefit to the community, which is what we learned, and which is why some people who have even made such comments voted against it and flipped their vote. So I believe that the DDA is a benefit to the community, not only financially, but also because of the other improvements it has helped with, and because of the events that it puts on. This community would be worse off without its DDA, is my honest opinion. And I do appreciate that our DDA has been working and striving so hard to resolve the differences and the problems that we've had between council and DDA. I think our joint subcommittee has gone a long way to resolving those issues. I really appreciate their efforts. Thanks, guys. Just wanted to actually formally acknowledge that. That's all I got.
I just want to thank again Pete and the police committee. I'm glad that we were able to come together with the township and come to an agreement and move forward. And with that said,
Do you want to let Mindy and Bob have a
I'm
turn?
sorry. Mindy and Bob. President Pro Tem Steffler.
Sure.
My brain's not working.
That's okay. Dale, you brought up the subject of the historic rainfall that we had the other day, and really want to highlight that DPW had previously cleaned the storm sewer catch basins, cleared off drain covers, which I really strongly feel like prevented a lot of problems. As part of the work that I do specifically with municipal stormwater in Southeast Michigan, where we see that lack of maintenance, communities have massive problems with flooding of streets, of homes, of basements, just catastrophic failures of infrastructure. So I do want to acknowledge and have the community aware that the work that they do is really important to protect people's property. And, doesn't always go perfectly. As we know, we can't plan for every storm that comes along, but by maintaining our infrastructure, continuing to work to upgrade things, we will help to alleviate that problem. And I think something you also mentioned, Dale, was older infrastructure was not designed to handle 21st century storms. Like, we will see more frequent, more intense storms. This should be the model for how we should try and plan for the future in maintaining the infrastructure that we have, and then continuing to work on upgrades, because this is going to be our future. So I just wanted to point that out and really give them kudos for being on top of things. The second thing isn't so positive, and that was that there was some vandalism at the park in the bathrooms. And Dale just wanted to ask if there were any updates on that you could provide on the investigation.
Well, what I know is that we saved the wood so it can be reused. That
Okay.
was one of the questions, and I think it can be reused to restore, they're very specific wood slatted doors.
Mhm.
So I think they can be reassembled. But the chief did review the video, and he told me they had some data, but I'm
Okay,
not
some
sure if
leads.
they're looking at a person or if they just know more about when the incident happened. One of the upgrades we're looking at this year is new cameras in the park. So we have better facial recognition, that sort of thing. So
There was a park board inspection that morning too, right? The day that we.
I believe it happened on during the week on a Monday, and it was.
Oh, it was
Tuesday
between
morning.
Sunday and Monday, or is it discovered on Monday? Never mind. I'm not going to discuss the ongoing
Yeah.
investigation. Never mind. But it just, I felt like there was a narrow gap of when we knew when it took
It is
place.
pretty narrow.
Yep.
Correct. Yeah. So it shouldn't have been a really long
Right.
period of time to try and search through that
Nope.
footage.
And
The
they-
camera is just not that great.
have identified the time, the people,
Mhm.
and so on.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that it did take a little convincing for the board to have bathrooms open during the day to provide those amenities to the users of the park. So I hope that this doesn't impair that ability in the future, but would ask the community to just be aware and ask questions of people who seem to be causing problems, and just keep an eye out in the community to try and prevent those problems. And, I don't know how often our officers cruise through the park, but certainly that could be a discouragement for future bad behavior. That's all I have. Thank you.
In the last one, it's sort of tough, everything has already been said that I wanted to say. And just, the committees, the subcommittees and everything for the police contracts, working with the DDA and everything everybody did a great job. Just thank you.
The only other comment I forgot, night of the storm, mentioning the DPW. DPW was out in force. There was 3 trucks around town. Manager Curbison was around town to help alleviate some of the issues going on. So kudos to them. With that said, now we're going to go into closed session. So audience, thank you for attending tonight. We appreciate it. Have a nice evening. Safe drive home.
You
And,
need a motion.
yeah, I need a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make the motion. We enter into closed session in accordance with Section 8D of the Michigan Open Meetings Act to consider the purchase of real property.
No,
Sport.
your contract,
Motion by, motion by President Pro Tem Steffler, supported by Councilmember Snyder, to go into closed session as stated on the record. Roll call.
Schneider?
Aye.
Steffler?
Aye.
Feldman?
Aye.
Glasser? Miller?
Aye.
Dyke?
Aye.
What does this think? Choose one piece of paper.
It's not much though.
Kim doesn't even let me see.
That was really good of you, Brad.